what I want to introduce or talk about is the old cliche that the best camera is the one that you have with you. And for the first time, everybody, almost everybody has a camera, but not just a small camera, but a very good camera. And it's also turned into a very effective weapon. As you see, you can go through the world now and record everything you see. It's unlimited. It doesn't cost you anything. There's no film. And it's not just a recording device, but the cameras now in the smartphone have gotten so good that you can actually use them as a creative device with, quote, whatever quality means, we'll go through that, with a quality that even excels what used to be possible with film. I want to take about 10 minutes, and I don't want to get technical because I also realize that the range of experience of people with cameras, and especially with smartphones, is enormous. And I don't want to make it too simple, I don't want to make it too technical, but there's certain terms that you should understand that'll help you take better pictures. And the way that photography worked with film and the difference with digital is that there was a piece of sensitive paper celluloid with silver grains on it. Light strikes those silver grains, they turn dark in various shades of gray. When you go to color, you have three different types. You have a red, a green, and a blue, all these silver grains, and when light strikes them, they combine and they give you eventually a picture. In order to get the light on that piece of film, you need a lens. And a lens normally used to be a piece of glass that size. The lens focuses the light onto the film, and you have a hole in the lens, which is the aperture. It lets in more light, less light. I'll finish this in 5 minutes. Less light and more light. You also have a shutter speed. Depending upon the shutter speed, more or less light comes in again. The faster the shutter speed, you're able to stop the motion. If there isn't much light out there, you keep the lens open for a longer period of time so that more light can strike the film. The other part of all this is what's known as the ASA or the ISO. It has to do with the sensitivity of the piece of film, how much silver is on that piece of film. Also, how big are the little silver grains? That's where we go with photography. With digital photography, the major difference is that the digital photo, instead of having little pieces of silver, has what we call pixels. Pixels are tiny, tiny little mechanical devices that are sensitive again to light, that's all. You can think of the pixel as in the same way that you think of the film. If there's more pixels on that piece of film, then there's going to be better resolution. In other words, it won't be as grainy. If the pixels themselves are larger, then you have more light gathering capability. If you have more pixels on that piece of film, which is now a mechanical device, which is the platform, there it is there. And this, I think you can, there it is. You can see it inside there, and that's where the light strikes now. And that is the equivalent of the film. There we go. So what digital photography does, that's very different, first of all. So the theories are the same. You've got something that gathers the light. It has a certain size. A piece of film is 35 millimeters, 1 inch by 1.5 inch. The sensors in these cameras are different sizes also, and they can have more megapixels than another. That's why an iPhone will advertise 25,000 MPs. That just means how many pieces of silver, how much light sensitivity it has. From there, The differences also are that they combine, again, almost the same way, that you have different pixels that are sensitive to different wavelengths of light, and you have red, green, and blue, and you combine them, and you get an image. Instead of an image on a piece of film where something gets developed, what you have is an electronic sensor that takes that information, which is digitized, and sends it to a computer. The computer then takes that information and turns that information into an image, and the image is transmitted to other people, and you see that image on your screen, or you take that piece of information, which is now called a file. A file is a group of information, particular information, the same way that on a negative that there's one piece of film that represents the whole picture. In the early days, which is now maybe 15 years, these cameras were fairly crude and were only used for surveillance type and snapshots. They've gotten so good at this point, and I'll explain why and what you can do with them, that it surpasses actually what we used to call quality with film photography. And the way that it's done, and this is not something you have to even be that concerned about, you may have a question. How can something as tiny, where is it, backwards, as this lens up here, you can barely see the hole. It is minuscule. And you say, how can the light get through something as small as that and give us pictures that are the sizes of billboards at this point? And the answer is, there's a twofold answer, maybe a threefold answer. One of them is that the sensors are extremely sensitive now, where all the little pixels are very, very sensitive. They're so sensitive that, relatively speaking, the fastest film, those of you who remember film, used to be known as Tri-X, which had a relative, let's just say 400 ASA. There are cameras now, these things now, and some of the digital cameras, like the full frame, that go up to 115, 125,000 ASA. You can take a picture in the dark. If you don't believe this, take your phone outside tonight. I just had this happen. Someone took a picture for me of someone else. And you can take pictures almost in complete darkness. And if you had a little infrared lens on it, which is what I've got at my cabin when I'm looking for animals at night, you put out this camera, it's $50, you stick it on a tree. If an animal goes by, an infrared light comes on, it takes a picture and it sends it to you. And the price now of these things is down to, as I say, this is $55, $60. The quality is superb. You watch television now, or you don't watch television, you watch your camera, and you see the videos that people are taking of other people. The quality is superb. There was one movie made with an Apple phone 4 or 5 years ago. I forget the name of it right now. It'll come to me, that won an Academy Award. And the entire film, the entire movie was made with one of these. Before we get started specifically, what we're going to do tonight is I want to go through how do you turn it on, not just how do you utilize the software that comes with your camera, and you may not know the capabilities that your camera has. And I want to go through that. Next week, we'll try to define what makes a good photograph and go through composition and how you can improve your pictures. The third week, we're going to use some of the editing programs that are out there. They're absolutely incredible. The most expensive one that I've seen for an app that you have to buy, actually, I think is about $5. There must be 10, 15 free apps out there. Photoshop, which costs, who knows, $500, $600 at this point, put out a free app right now that you can get and you can load up onto your phone. And it's almost, seriously, almost as functional for what you need to do as the full Photoshop app. So we'll get into that, and then during the last week, what I want to try to do is also talk about how do you organize, how do you share your pictures. That's also very important. How do you get them out on the web? How do you keep people from coming in and getting on your web? How do you share them? How do you send them? What's the best way to send them? And also to talk a little bit about how do you put together a book. For about $35, $40 these days, you can have a 4x6 book printed, published, done well. And we'll go over all of these specific publishers, how much they cost, how do you find them. And what I also would like to do, and we'll see about that between this week and next week, is to be able to put up a list of URLs where you can go and start to get information yourself. If you start to Google this, I'll show you a few of them tonight. But I want to be able to have some kind of board. I think Clayton will be able to do that, where you'll be able to go in and I'll have listed, so you just have to click on that URL and you can go out and find that. Before we get started with the cameras, let me stop here, and if there are any questions, Clayton, that you think we should answer, and what you can do is ask the questions through the chat.
Yep, we've made it so people can ask questions. I'm watching both chat here in Zoom and the chat on YouTube. So if people are watching on either platform, they can ask any questions. There were some questions at the beginning about volume, but I think that all got resolved. We're all looking good.
Good.
We had a couple of people join, so I've been mentioning to folks who will be using that and encouraging people to post those questions there. So far, the only thing that is actually a comment that I put on both. The movie I think that you were thinking of, Ron, I believe was the movie called Tangerine. It was all
That's it, Tangerine. Wonderful movie. I'm sure it's streaming. And it was shot completely with a 5-year-old iPhone.
Yeah. And it's a story about people living on the street and in some pretty extreme situations.
Yes.
So it fits everybody that I know, no matter what their housing situation is, has a phone in their pocket of some sort. Sometimes people are carrying more than one. So, yeah.
One question I want to ask, and Clayton, you'll have to be able to see them. Mm-hmm. There are two main quote cameras right now. I won't say the make of phone. There are two operating systems. There's the iPhone, which is the Apple, which is a constant, no matter who makes the phone for it. And the other is what we call the Android, which is it's usually a Microsoft Google system, mostly Google now. And I can't do both that well because there's only one Apple. I can do that. I can put that screen up here so you can see what I'm doing. But every make of Android phone, like the LG and the Samsung, are slightly different. So it's not going to look the same. But I'd like to find out how many people that are out there have the Apple and how many people have an Android phone, because I can do some things with the Android.
So Ron, I am going to launch a poll that I just did that people can actually answer to give us some feedback that we can all see. So we can let the poll be up for a couple, for a little short time here. If people are watching on YouTube, this is unfortunately a spot where you really need to chime in. The poll's only going to work in Zoom. But we're just asking the folks that are out here today, what kind of smartphone do you have? Do you have an Apple? Do you have an Android? Or do you have something else? So.
Okay, that gives me a good idea.
Great. So I'll close the poll. We might want to tell people, because I don't think anybody else can see the results. It seems like overwhelmingly it is Apple. 16-6. It's Apple to Android, so people know. So
okay,
there we go. Thank you for all participating in our poll.
Yeah, let me get rid of. It's on my screen. There we go. Okay, very good. So what I'll be doing, and it may take a few minutes of fiddling just to make sure it works, I'm going to put on my phone so that you're seeing directly through my phone as I go through this. And the differences will be, I'll try to be as generic as possible as we go through the differences between the different operating systems. They're not significant. And the most important thing is, after tonight, when I do any showing of apps and editing programs and publishing and sharing, it'll be universal. It'll be cross-platform. So I won't use any apps, any photo apps or editing apps that don't work on both the Android and on the iPhone. So that's where we'll go from there. The terms that I'll be using, I will explain, and we'll start right off the bat with the phone. Let's say I'm backwards, with the phone itself. Every one of these phones usually has a different way of turning it on. Some of them you can turn it on, and I discovered today or yesterday something that if you go like this, it turns on the camera on your phone, on your iPhone. There are different ways of getting to the app itself. You can have it set up. I have one folder, and it's a good idea to learn how to use folders on your phone, because you can group on your phone by different, like you can have photography, you can have all of your apps in there, you can have books, and it's much easier if you do that, so that when you do go into the photography, you can have all of your apps in one place. It's a good thing to learn how to do. It's fairly easy to find that out. I think at this point, what we'll do is I will now take a few minutes to go on and start to share my screen with you all. And let's do it this way. And I will share that, and screen mirroring, and Ron's iMac.
Success. You got it.
You see it. All right?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Now, let's get out of that, and let's go to there we go. The first thing that you're going to see, and you should take out your camera, especially now, no matter what kind of a camera you have, and have that camera out so that if you have a question of each one, I'm going to go through each icon that's there and what the capabilities of that icon are. I want to go back one other step. The big difference between photography before with film and photography now is the computer. The power of what these cameras can do now is not that much dependent anymore necessarily on these tiny little lenses, but upon taking that information and using a computer to create images that are absolutely spectacular. And you can see just that image in the back of my screen, which was, again, I mean, I can blow, a friend of mine blew this up to something like 6 by 4 feet, which was taken again with an iPhone. So what you've got here, the first thing, if you see an icon with a flash and you see a little line through it, that turns the flash on or off automatically. So when the line goes through it, when you're taking a picture of somebody, the flash won't go off no matter what. It used to be very important to have the flash going on. I can't remember the last time that I actually used flash. Flash is not a very flattering thing for a portrait, and the range is really only maybe 6 feet. So when you see people at a football stadium and you see all these flashes going off, the range is really 4 to 6 feet. You're not going to use that much. I always use it and leave it off because it's very rare that you are going to need that to do it for anything. The next kind of a symbol you'll see is maybe something like this icon here. And that is the thing that drives people who have Apple phones nuts. Because what that does is that gives you, if you take a picture with it, like that, it says live. And what live means is that when you send that picture to somebody, it has a little motion beforehand. So if someone's moving, you're going to see that live there. I'll see if it'll work right now. I'll try it now and move the camera. And then when you send the picture, the image will be moving. I suggest that unless you know what you're doing, that you probably leave that also off, but at least know what it is. I don't know if this has happened to people, I'm sure it has, that you send this picture or you get a picture and it looks at first like a video. It's not a video. Well, it is actually. It takes a series of images and it gives you that sense of, I'll try to stop doing this, that sense of motion. I would leave that off. When you see an icon like up here in the top with looks like a little clock, what that is the self-timer. And you can set a self-timer to take the picture after you click the shutter for 3 seconds or 10 seconds. Why would you want to do that? It's not like having a large camera that you put on a tripod and you went out and you ran out after 10 seconds and everybody got in the picture. One of the things that you can do is, I'll show you this later, for about $15 to $20, you can get a pretty good tripod for one of these things. They're small, and you can just put it and wrap it. I'll show you how to do this. Wrap it around something, set it for 10 seconds, set the shutter off, run out there, and you can take a group picture rather than the group pictures you see now, which are done with the front camera that you take a selfie with. And usually what you end up seeing with a selfie is somebody holding the camera in there, holding the camera so close to them that they're almost distorted. So that's what that is, and you can turn that off. The next thing that you'll probably see is an image, and it's the bottom right corner here, and that turns the camera on the front camera and on the back camera, which is how you take a selfie. You can turn that back off. Be careful that that's not on. Now, this is important. These cameras come with a lens, with an aperture. You can't really control the aperture that well. You can't really control the shutter speed that well. And I will show you how to get a free app that will allow you to manually take over the control of the camera. One of the things you may want to take the control over is if you're taking a portrait of somebody, can they see me also while I'm doing this?
Not the folks on YouTube.
Okay, but the others can. So I am seeing a little bit. The larger that the aperture is, the shallower what we call depth of field. What does depth of field mean? It simply means things that are in focus from near to far. If you're taking a picture of a landscape and you want to get everything in, what you do is you stop the lens down as far as possible. You put your camera on a tripod and you get tremendous depth of field. The other thing that gives you depth of field is a wide angle lens, which is a lens that gives you a wider angle of view. When you take a portrait, you want the shallowest depth of field possible so that the portrait of the person stands out rather than seeing me, or Clayton you can see, and everything is in focus behind me, which is distracting. So when you take a portrait, usually the lens will automatically stop down. You don't right now, and we're not going to talk about it tonight, you don't have that much control over this. What you do have control over, and that's for those of you who have more the later Apple cameras, the iPhones, is there are multiple lenses in the camera. And this is important to understand. There's a quote, what a normal lens is. A normal lens takes a picture about the way that your eye will see. In film, it used to be a 50 millimeter lens. it's not relevant anymore because of the small size, but your camera will have a slight wide angle lens, which makes it able to take in a wider area. The other kind of lens you can have is a telephoto lens, and I'm sure you've all seen that, where you can actually go out and reach out. It narrows down the field of view, but it magnifies what's far off. The problem is this. When you have your camera, most of you are used to going like this on the screen to make something bigger. The problem with that is, if it's not optical, in other words, if it's not a big, oh, where are you? Oh, you can't, they can't see this.
Nope, we're looking at the ceiling right now.
I'll show you later. The problem is that when you have a big telephoto lens, or you see these people with big lenses on their cameras, what it's doing is it's actually optically, with a piece of glass, taking a picture. And it's narrowing the field, but you're still using the quality. You're using as many pixels as possible. When you go like this to take a wide picture, what you're normally doing is you're increasing the apparent size of those little pixels, and you're going to get what we used to call in film grain. And that's why we mean by the quality of the image is the picture that you send to people, or if you take the picture late at night and you're using a very high ASA. How do you get a high ASA or sensitivity? You throw bigger pixels at it, you throw bigger pieces of film at it. And when you take a picture with a high ASA, you're going to get, again, a picture that doesn't have that sharpness that you think should be there. And that's what we eventually will start to call quality. It's a relative term of what quality is. But you should be aware that going like this may detract from the quality of that picture and make it fuzzier and make it grainier. And I don't know what I just did there to get that, but that's neat. I don't know what that was. Anyway, oh, it's coming back and forth. All right, so now you'll see down here, right where the Apple is, 2.1. On the Apple camera, you'll see a 1x if it's a fairly recent camera and if it's got two lenses. If you hit it again, it goes to 2x, and that gives you that slight telephoto effect. If you have an Android camera, I don't know if I think some of the newer Android cameras have upwards of 3 lenses. And if some of you have some of the newer Samsung cameras, you've got a normal lens, a wide angle lens, and a telephoto lens in your camera. But be careful again of doing this to get all the way up. So that's what that is there, and there's the 2x. Now, you'll see also some kind of an icon up there, which looks like, in this case, 3 overlapping filters. And I think it's almost identical on the Android. If you touch that, what that gives you is the ability to control how the picture is going to look before you take it. On this camera here, it has original, and as I move down, that says vivid, and you see the picture changing as I do this. That's dramatic warm, that's dramatic cool, and then there are a series of black and whites. You can even take a silver tone or a sepia picture. So what you can do is you can set your camera to take a picture in one of these designations. I can't tell you what dramatic warm means. It's a little bit more yellow, or dramatic means, or vivid cool. You've got to go and fool with this yourself and see if you like the picture and see what it does. The captions are fairly self-evident. So that's what that up there is. So it allows you to do that. Why you would want to take a black and white picture, I don't know. Because when you go to print a picture, or you go to change a picture from color to black and white, you want color. And then what you want to be able, if you take a picture in black and white, it might only send black and white information. If you take the picture in color, when you get it onto your editor, and we'll look at that, there's much more information, because when you change the picture into black and white, you still have red, green, and blue channels. And it gives you much more creative control over the picture that will eventually come out than doing it right now. If I take noir, that's what you're going to get. And there's not nearly as much, there's only a third as much information in there. So that's one other thing you should be aware of.
The first person who said they got lost was trying to figure out how you got the 2x. So like on your screen right now, we can see it's original and we see the filters. But if you wanted to zoom in, how did you get that? What did you actually do? Because we can't see your fingers as they tap.
Yeah, and I can't see you. Okay, good question. You will only have, I think, the 2x if you have another lens. And what the other lens does is give you a double the focal length. I won't go into that too. Double the focal length of what 1x is. What it means is, and you can see this, see that? So now I have a telephoto lens. Now I go back to the normal lens, which is 1x and 2x. If
and you're just
don't,
getting that by pinching or and extracting? Is that how it's showing up?
It's
or
doing
by
it's,
tapping?
It's actually changing lenses to go to a 2x lens, to a telephoto lens. If you don't have that, that means you don't have multiple lenses, okay? You may not have it. And if any of you, I'd love to see it, have one of the new Samsung, I think it's a Samsung, it's about $1,100. I think it's got 3 or 4 lenses. And all those lenses are here in the front of the camera. And that's where the lenses are tiny, tiny things. But that's what the 1x and the 2x means. If you don't have it, you don't have it. If you're taking a picture of somebody and you have to get close to them, do that. You'll still get a picture. I had to take an image of something. It was for reference. You can go like that and you'll still know what it is.
Okay, great.
Okay, other questions about the, let's call it the prefiguring of the image?
Well, I think a couple times, because we could do a little bit more just to help people understand the where the icons were. So I know on the top of your screen, there's 4. Maybe we could just do a real quick survey again. Yeah. And then I would find it helpful, a reminder how we got the filters again. So I think along the top, you had flash, you had the live, you had the timer.
I'm going on your screen left to right. The first is the flash. The second is this thing called live. I don't know if it's on all the Android phones, but I'm almost sure it's on all the Apples. The next is the self-timer, which allows you to set a timer so that it goes off at a particular time. And then those 3 configuring little filters represent on all cameras some kind of filter. And when you hit that, it'll usually change color. And that filter now allows me to pre-filter, like putting a filter over the lens, to change the color and the rendition of the picture before you take it. Now, what I'm going to do, now you see how it changed color, that the 3 circles have a different color up there. That means it's on. And if I hit it again, it should go off. If it doesn't go off that way, it goes off that way. Okay, and then it goes back off. That should go off. Okay, now, if you want to take a self-portrait or a selfie, there's usually an icon. In this case, it's down at the bottom right. And that changes from the front camera, from the front camera to the back camera. So now I'm taking a selfie, and because I have my filters on, you can see now a little bit better the effect it has on me. There's dramatic, it must be more colors. There's the different black and whites. And your camera may have different capabilities. And then you always want to remember to go back to original, and what you'll see is that the icon in the top right is no longer colored. That means your filter is no longer on, but it is. So I don't know why that happens. Now, the next thing that you want to do is to go down to the bottom, and at the very bottom, there's your shutter release. The thing with the shutter release is that you still have control as to where that shutter release is, where you go for that shutter release. You can do that, or most Apple cameras too, you can set it up so that the volume controls, which are on the side of your, you won't see that, on the left side of your camera, the volume controls also work as a shutter release. That's very handy so that you don't have to get your other hand, hold the camera in one hand and take your finger and try to put the shutter release on that white button. Try that. Make sure you've got that.
I think that's worth repeating, Ron, because whenever I've done this, like I think the most powerful technique I ever learned was how, like, if I was taking a low picture, like trying to catch a reflection over a puddle of water or something, that I didn't have to, like, it got really awkward. It was really dangerous. I could almost drop my phone in the water. But being able to use the volume button to capture to trigger the shutter, it helps me take some really neat angles.
It's a very, very good thing to be able to do. Your volume controls, which on the Apple are on the left-hand side, if you use the bottom one, I think, or the top one, it's the shutter release. So that allows you to take pictures with one hand. Worth the price of admission for tonight. Okay? Now, at the bottom of your screen, you'll have another series of titles or icons that you can move back and forth. The one that is yellowed or lit is the one that you want to set. You have a choice. You can see now that it's yellow. That means it's a photo. If you want to take a portrait, you go to the portrait mode. When you go to the portrait mode, another set of instructions and tools comes up. And they're at the bottom there. And let me just see if I can change this like that. Okay. Now, this is now taking a picture, a portrait in natural light. If I go a little bit like that, that's studio light. If I turn it like that, it's contour light, whatever that means. Stage light, which allows me to have a circle and allows me to take a picture like that. Then you can also go to stage light, black and white. So these are the options that you have when you go to take a picture of somebody as a portrait. Okay, I mean, and we'll have time for questions. If there's anything right now, I'll do it again. So when you go to portrait, you'll notice that the minute you go to portrait, and it's the same thing on your Android, there'll be some option there, and I'll try to get the Android up here. And there it is. The next option on the Apple is square. What that does is it changes the dimension of the picture so that it's square. It looks like an old 2 1/4 inch camera. You're not going to use it that much. I don't know. Well, if you ever want to take a square picture, that's what you can do. But what's really neat is the thing that says Pano. And Pano allows you to take a panoramic picture. The way that this works, it's important to do it this way. I'm going to do one here now. I'm going to turn around and see, I'm not watching you, and I'm going to see that arrow, you start the pano, and what you do is you move it in one plane, just like that, until the end, turn it off, And what you've got is a panoramic picture just like that. It's absolutely incredible. And the pictures that you can take with these cameras outdoors, when you fool around with this, it stitches all of those frames together so that there's no horizon that you can see. I could have probably taken a picture just now of 360 degrees and gone completely around. That's panoramic.
Panoramic is really cool. We had a couple of comments before when you were showing the portrait, and I do think it's important to tell people portrait is a pretty new Apple device or Apple tool. It's not present on the iPhone in my hand, and it's not on a lot of Androids. There may be some Android operating systems that have a portrait, but I don't think it's very common if it's present at all. So you may not find the portrait on your phone unless you have one of the newer ones. People are really excited to learn and have the panel shown again. So
I'm going to do it again.
And maybe you can show, I've used it to capture trees. You can go the other way too, which is kind of cool. If you want to it's a little tricky to do. And that actually I found works better on the Android where it's a little smarter. But I don't know if you've learned, there's one tip where you tap the screen. Are you going to show them how to do that, Ron?
No, because I don't know.
If you tap the screen in panel mode, you can make it, instead of going from left to right,
yes.
Go from right to left.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, you can do that. I've never really fooled around with doing it this way, but do you have to go up and down with the arrow like that?
Yeah, it's a little tricky to get sometimes, but if you play with it, I've used it in a forest where I wanted to capture a really neat
tree. A tree.
Sky. Yeah.
Neat. Okay. Yeah. I'll do it again. Normally, you're going to see the photo there. The portrait, and one other thing I want to talk about with the portrait, because you're going to write this word down, B-O-K-E-H. I think it's Japanese, bokeh. All that means is that when you take a portrait, that you have a nice diffused out of focus background. And the better the quote bokeh, the better the person's portrait stands out. That's what they're talking about. So in order to do the panorama, you move this to pano and you'll see the arrow. And there'll be a little sign that says move phone continuously when taking a panorama. So you start by hitting the shutter release and going like this slowly, and keep going and try to keep it level. There should be a yellow line that allows you to keep it yellow, and go as far as you want, all the way that you want. Stop it, and that's what you get. And that is IFC. That's incredible.
My daughter loves to, when I'm taking a panel, will love to be in one frame and then run behind me and be in another and then disappear and be in a third, so I can have 3 pictures of her all in the same landscape.
Well, that's
very silly.
What you may not realize, because you never really, most of us, a lot of us have never had to deal with film cameras. This has exposed every single inch in this room with different lighting. I've got a light here. There's no light back there against that wall. And it's exposing every little piece of this room so that you can see detail in every little part of this. And you can take a picture once you've done this, and you can blow this up onto your wall and make a 4 by 6 foot, and I'm not exaggerating, print out of this. And they're absolutely incredible. We'll show you more with these, but that's the panoramic. And it's something you've got to practice with a little bit at first, because as you turn it, you're tempted to go and turn it sideways. Don't. Just turn it the way the arrow goes. Okay? Any questions in here so far?
There was one question about how to find the panel on the Android, and I answered it in the chat, but in case other people with Androids are following along, on my Android, I get it when I'm in the photo app by going to the far right. On the bottom, I have photo and then video, and on the far right there's something called More, and it's my More option on my More screen where I have a panel and several other options too.
We have until 7:30, right? I mean, we have plenty of time for it.
Yeah, well, we're good. Yeah.
I'm going to try to show this. I figured out a way with the LG camera.
Okay.
But they almost all have the panoramic. Your best bet, and do this, go online, get the manual for your camera, and get the manual and put it on your pad, on your screen, whatever it is, download the manual and do a search for panoramic. And it'll take you right into the instructions for your LG phone or for your Samsung phone, and give you a very, very good idea of how to do it. Or what you can do is, and this you should get used to, you can see my screen still, is go out there and go, where is the panorama for an LG phone? And you'll end up, how do I take panoramic picture with my LG phone? And there you go. Can you see that screen?
No, we're only seeing your phone. And
all right, hold on.
Can see you.
All right. New share. Back to the desktop. Share it. There you go. You can see it now?
Yep, now we see it.
I just Googled.
Yeah.
Where is the panorama on an LG phone? And there it is. And you've got about not only 15 different sets of instructions, very simply how to do it, but you can also find out there, you'll find all kinds of videos on how do I take a picture with my LG phone, and someone will be out there showing you how to do it. All right, let's go back to share.
There was another question, Ron, that came across, which is if you're using an iPhone and you want to change the resolution of the picture that's being saved, and they were thinking about, quality or resolution, everything from 720 pixels to 1080 to a 4K. Is there a way to control? I mean, what's native? Are there ways to boost it? Are there ways if you want to save space where you can cut it back and not be using, sometimes you want to shoot everything in 4K, but if you shoot everything in 4K, you're going to burn up your hard drive pretty quick.
Can you ask that? Are we talking about video now, or are we talking about?
Well, some of that is going to be video. But some of it could also just be the resolution. How large is the image that you're taking? Is that something you've played with? Do you usually just use whatever's native, or do you go about?
No, that's a very good question. First of all, when you buy the camera, they're going to be advertising it MPs, megapixel. This phone has a 24 megapixel. This one has a 16. This one has a 15. It's in the software. And the best way to do it is get a review. It's all in the software. It's all in the algorithms. The quality, everything is there in the algorithms. If they can fit a slightly bigger lens in, they will. If they can fit a slightly bigger sensor in, they'll do it. It's nothing you have any control over. You've just got to realize that the lower the light, the higher the ASA, the lower the quality, except not now, because the computer in these things is so good that it's going to interpolate and figure out what would make a good picture and add parts to the final picture. You can take a picture in the dark and it might just take everything next to something else and make up another picture. So you really can't control it. You can control it with video. And I'll get into that a little bit. So this is what we've got down here. Now,
Ron, there was also a related question, if I can ask you one more. Somebody has had an experience, and many of us, I think, have had this experience, where you're looking at a photograph and it looks fabulous on your screen, but then you go to have it developed, or even sometimes you go and print it on your printer at home and it looks grainy. Why does that happen? How can you fix it?
That happens because every medium through which you see the picture or perceive it depends upon mostly the capabilities of the medium. I have a Mac screen here which has got a resolution, let's say, of 5,000 lines. My TV has a resolution of 3,000 lines per foot. Well, because I've got 5,000 lines, the picture is going to look much finer than the picture on my TV. When I go to show it on something else, it can be different again. When you go to have something printed, it's very, very difficult to ascertain how it's going to come out. So for 50 cents, go to CVS, have some pictures printed for $1, see if you like them. If not, there, go to Walgreens. They're actually extraordinarily good prints that you're going to get 5x7 up to about 8x10. It's hard to control that. The more light you have, the finer the picture will be because your ASA, or your sensitivity, will be lower. I can say that. All right.
Have
Now,
a couple more if you'd like them, or we can hold them.
We got plenty of time. Go to it.
So there is a question about macro photography, and then there's also a question about HDR. Because a lot of times on Apples, you see that HDR at the top there between the flash and the timer.
Yeah.
So I don't know which you'd like to address first.
We'll address both, and they're good to address. Macro photography stands for, it's close-up photography. Whether you have the capability of the close-up photography or not is usually a function of the lens and the software in the camera. And it turns out that the Apple has, there it is, look at that. I can get within 2 inches. So if this was a flower, I can get right up there, or I can take a close-up picture of a flower just by getting close. The other thing you can do is go to 2x if you've got it and bring it up and look at that. Wow. There's macro photography, okay? I don't have a flower right here.
So,
anyway.
So the person who's having a hard time, taking pictures, they described, when they said macro, they were having a hard time getting crisp, detailed photos, both of wildlife and close-up of plant life. So wildlife, unless you're doing bugs, is going to be pretty hard with a phone to do macro. Because
I think that you got to understand the difference in the term between macro and telephoto. Macro is close-up. You saw what I was able to do. I can get right down onto something that close with an Apple, which is amazing. You used to have a special lens on other cameras.
Yeah.
When you're taking wildlife photography, you need a telephoto lens. And the biggest limitation of these cameras is that they don't have telephoto lenses. The 2x on an iPhone is actually about the equivalent of a normal lens on a regular camera. So there really isn't a telephoto per se lens that's going to magnify it that much. That's when you have to go out and squeeze back and forth on your screen. HDR is high definition resolution. What an HDR picture is, and I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to show you that right now. I think that's important. The next thing is, though, I want to go just and finish this. Your next option is video, and you'll usually have the button go red, and you start the video, and you stop the video. And we'll have to take some time to do just video. At the top, you'll know how long your video was on. The next one here is slow motion, which a lot of other people don't have. But what it does is it takes a video in slow motion, and that will just play using slow motion. We'll try that later. I don't want to spend too much time with that now. Time lapse is another good one, where if you want to play with this, now this is just on the Apple, that allows you to have the camera go off at a particular period of time. You could set it up on some kind of tripod and take a picture of a flower every 2 hours opening at night. And that is something that we'll have to try at a different time. And that is something that all the cameras don't have. and it will go for a while, take a picture in 5 seconds, take another picture in 5 seconds, another picture in 5 seconds.
Every time we've flown, my daughter loves to do time lapse for to capture the plane taking off, because you can take, you know, a 20-minute takeoff and then, you know, as you leave the ground and encapsulate it in a short video, and it's kind of, it speeds up. It's kind of a fun way she entertains herself as we're flying. So
now we're going to come to the editing capabilities. It's impossible in an hour and a half to cover all of this. I just want to show you what all of these do. When you go now to look at your pictures, and you go to wherever they are, on this one here, they're at the bottom, and all the pictures you've taken have been saved somewhere, and you have the ability now to go and look at the pictures. On this camera here, it showed you down in the left-hand corner. What the capabilities are after that, you're going to see a bunch of icons in the bottom, and I don't know why you're not seeing the icons at the bottom here. Okay, I see. Okay. They're not going to show up. There we go. All right. Something there at the bottom of your screen is going to show up and say edit. When you go to the edit, you're going to have a series here. Let me get rid of the video. That's the problem. Cancel that. And let's get out of the video and go to the camera and go back to photo. Make sure that you're set at photo, and then down in the left-hand corner, you can review your pictures. So you've got a picture here of a flower. This was done, there's an example of macro. Now, there's the picture we just took. You'll have a command at the bottom of your screen that says, or the top, that says edit. I can't show it to you because for some reason or other it doesn't show up on this. And you go to and you hit edit, and now I can show you. Now, there's your picture, and you're going to have a series of icons. One icon you'll have on your camera, on every camera, is going to say auto, and it usually looks like a magic wand. If I hit that, it's automatically going to try to improve it. You may not see it because the picture was perfectly exposed to begin with. I suppose if I go to a different picture, let's take a picture there, and let's go to try to edit that and see if it changes that. Not much. So you're not always going to see it. And we'll discard the changes there and go back to, all right, this is a better one to do it. And now we'll go, this was a picture taken, and this is HDR, and I'm going to explain what HDR is in a minute. And I go to auto. Did you see the clouds lightened up a little bit? Now, the other thing that you can do is to increase or decrease the auto. And you'll see here, watch what happens. If I decrease the light at top and I increase it, I can change the aspects of the clouds. And what you've got to do is do this on your own, and you'll see that you can change. The next icon is...
And Ron, you're just dragging your finger back and forth across the dial. It looks like a dial there.
Yeah. The next one you're going to see next to it, this is you're not going to learn this all night. This is what you got to play with. You see one there that now says exposure. And there's a line, and I'm moving it back and forth. I can decrease the exposure. I can increase the exposure. So it allows me to take that original image and play with it as a term so that you can optimize it the way that you like it. Then you can go to the next one, which is brilliance. Whatever brilliance is, I'm never sure of how to, I had a very good definition of the difference between brilliance and what brilliance is and what brilliance applies region-specific adjustments to brighten dark areas and pull in highlights and add contrast to reveal hidden detail and make your photo look richer and more vibrant. Let's do it. So, look at that. Look what that does to the clouds. Or I can do that. So this is changing the aspect and the way it looks. If I want those houses to come out, rather than the sky, and that be the focus, I can do that. And you go back and forth like that, and you can change what we call the brilliance. The other one again was the overall exposure. The next one is highlights. That means that as I go back and forth, I'm only going to affect the highlights. So it takes the highlights of those clouds, and as I make them darker, look what happens. As I drop down the exposure, I really bring out the contrast, and those are really quite something. And then you go up here, and it changes that. This is for you to fool around with. Go outside, take a picture. Before the light goes down, run back home and play with this. The next one is the shadows. And the shadows, let's use a different picture. And let's go to a picture that was taken indoors here. And let's go look at that. And let's edit that one. And if we go to the shadows in there, you'll see that what it allows us to do is bring out, see the areas now coming out? You can see the areas in that closet, and now it darkens them. So if you've taken a portrait of a person and their face is in the shadows, you can actually bring out the detail in their face. So if you've taken a picture in sunlight, which you should never do, two rules. Never take a picture in sunlight and never have your subject smile. If you'll just follow that, your photography is going to improve enormously. Take a look at any prize-winning portraits. You'll never have that SEG, that eating grin, that Kodak grin where everyone looks at. Stop that. Just do that. And sunlight is very, very poor because the contrast is so wide that you're not going to get detail in the faces. You want to be able to do it, do that, and it'll come out. All right, that's shadows. And then you can go back to 0. The next one is contrast, and we'll go out of that, and we'll go back to a regular, let's just go to the flower. Let's just take a picture of someone taken outdoors. And if you want contrast, what that's going to do is to increase the difference between the light and dark areas. There's high contrast. See that? See how it increased darks? It increases the blacks and it increases the whites. This makes everything in the same narrow amount of light. So you can take that picture and actually increase the contrast to bring that figure out more. The other thing that you can do is, again, what we call here brightness, which changes again. You have to do this yourself. The brightness is the overall light and dark of the picture, but you've got to play with it. It has to do with light.
Not to be confused with brilliance. Brightness and brilliance are...
You tell me. I suppose I can give you, I can give you definitions, but it doesn't always make sense. The black point sets and increases the areas of black. See that happening there in the foliage? That's your black point. And then saturation. Okay, this will drive you nuts. There's a thing called saturation, there's vibrance, And there's also sometimes, there's one other. Saturation increases the intensity of all the colors together. Vibrance increases the color, the intensity of the muted colors more. So if I go to saturation and I saturate that, see that now where all the colors are deepened. If I let them up, I'll eventually get black and white. And this used to be a way of getting black and white photographs. It's another way. Just take away the saturation and there's no more color. Again, there's saturation, there's lack of it. Vibrance is here, and it's only going to, look at that. What it's doing is it's affecting the middle colors, so I can actually make the figure of the girl stand out in color a little bit more. That's vibrance. It's again color. Warmth makes the color more yellow or more green, essentially. There's warmth, you want to warm it up. There's less warmth, and it goes to green. The next one is tint. Change the tint of the picture. Okay? The next one is sharpness. I don't know. What sharpness does, and you may want to do this with a portrait, be very careful. It really increases the edges so that it's apparently sharp. It changes the edges enough. See that? See that looks, oops. I got to get back out of here and back there and back there. Do you see what happened there with the edges of the person? That made it look sharp. But really what it does is it increases the apparentness of the edges. And let's just take a look here at that. And let's go there. And let's go to sharp. There's brightness. Let's go to sharpness. And sharpness. And if I increase the sharpness by a lot, there you see that? Sometimes it works well for a picture that's a little fuzzy. You can never get an out of focus picture back into focus. You can only fool the eye. But sharpness will allow you sometimes with a picture of a group of people to make it look a little bit better, a little sharper. I'm only telling you what these little commands mean. Definition. It removes layers of haze, whatever that means. It makes the colors more saturated and increases it a little bit. I would tell you to fool with this. See that? Did you see how it darkened it up like that? Looks a little bit better. That's something for you to play with. And what you can do is each one of these controls, and the reason that we're doing this tonight is to show you the capabilities and the number of controls that are built into your camera. I could spend an evening very seriously just doing definition. But what I want you to see is the capability that your camera has with all of these different ways of changing the different ways that a picture looks. So you can take a rose or you can take a flower and you can change all that. Vignette, it makes shadows around the edges. People used to do this a lot with photographs. It draws your eye into the center more. You may want to fool around with this if you're taking a portrait. That's what that does there. See around the edges. Noise reduction. If you got a fuzzy picture, try it. I mean, really. If you've got parts of a photograph, someone asked earlier, what happens when you print a picture or you see it on a screen and it's fuzzy or it doesn't look good? Try the noise reduction, and what it'll do, it'll smooth those little grains of silver and it'll smooth them out enough so that they're not as noticeable. Thing to do is, the best way to do it is to go out and for yourself and take a selfie. Go like that. Take a selfie. Bring up the selfie. Go out, edit it, and fool around with it. You want more contrast? There. Less contrast? There's high contrast. This is the picture I just took. You want brightness? You can make it bright. You can make it less. You can have saturation so that my face is black and white. Or if you want to go all the other way, it'll be red. And you can play with each one of these until you start to understand the ways that it can change the picture after you've taken it. If you want to make it much sharper, there's that. And you can see the reflection in my glasses, how much sharper that is now than it was there. Same with definition. There it is. All right. So let's just get out of that for now and discard the changes there. And let's go back and take another picture. And let's take this picture here, edit this. And now you go here and there's 3 at the middle bottom. You see those 3 overlapping circles again. This is another filter symbol. You all see that? And again, what this does is changes the picture after I've taken it. So as you go there and you hit the filters, there's the original, and it's going to change them vivid, vivid warm, vivid cool, all the different variables and variations that you can have once you've taken the picture. So you have tremendous control with these cameras, not only what you can do before you take the picture, but what you can do after you take the picture. And this is all built into the software. If you want to, you can go again to the auto, and you can change the exposure or the brilliance once it's in black and white. We'll discard the changes. Now, the next one is straighten. And this is if you have a picture that's not straight, you can take the picture and actually straighten it out like that. If you have a building that's not straight, go to that. You see that icon in the bottom right. Look at that. That's the crop tool. It's the universal crop tool. It's the same on every camera. And instead of cropping it, we're going to straighten the picture out. And when you go there to straighten, you go there like that, and you go to straighten, it allows you to change the perspective of the picture. It would be seen to be better in a picture like this one. And we'll go there now, and we'll straighten, see my horizon. You often take pictures where you don't have the horizon going through the center of your photograph. Go to the crop tool and go like this until you get your horizon straight, and then say done, and it will fix the picture, and there you go. All right? I can't spend a lot of time. I want you to see that it's there. So you go back there, and then you also can straighten the picture out this way. If you've got distortion in a picture, you've got a picture of a group of people, and the person in the right or left-hand corner is a little distorted because of the lens. You can actually go out and change the perspective by using this straighten tool. Okay? Now, we'll go there and we'll cancel that, and that is the auto. And you can always go back to your original picture and revert to the original. And you can see now that my horizon isn't straight. And that's the original picture. Okay, so far, so good. Now, I don't think we want to get right now into too many of the extra edits that are there, because I do want to have some time to stop here. We've covered a lot of material. And let's just stop for a minute and let's see what kind of questions we have before I show you anything else.
Did we cover HDR, Ron? I don't remember.
HDR, most important thing. Okay. HDR, let me just see a good example here, and I'll show you how that works. And HDR, it stands for High Dynamic Range Imaging. And let's see, are we back here to my, oops, hold on. High Dynamic Range Imaging. I'm going to show you right now what that means. When you take a photograph, you have a light meter in your camera, some kind of a meter that reads the light and tells you the amount of light that you need to get the optimum image. In other words, it gives you enough light to be able to get detail. The problem is, when you take a picture like this, in light, where there's dark areas and light areas, it's not possible to get optimum exposure in both the highlights and the other lights. Look at this picture here, and in the foreground, those are bushes. Now, those bushes are completely underexposed, but I wanted to get some definition in the clouds. So I aimed my camera up at the clouds so that the clouds where the light is are well exposed. What does well exposed mean? Looks good. You can see the definition. You can see the clouds. You can't see anything right now in the bushes in the foreground. What how did I put it? High definition resolution here. What it does is it takes 3 pictures. It takes a picture for the clouds, the light area, and exposes correctly. It takes a picture in the shadows and it exposes correctly. And then it takes a picture normally the way that the camera would try to average. That's what your camera tries to do. It tries to average everything. Then the computer takes all 3 pictures and puts them together. And as it puts them together, it does this. And that is an HDR picture. So what I did was I took an HDR picture. The Apple takes 5 exposures, believe it or not. It takes 5 pictures. It'll go for the highlights. It went for the foreground where the bushes and the grass are, and it went for the middle. It took all 5 pictures and put them all together so that I end up with one picture, HDR picture, and you can see detail in the highlights, in the water, and in the grass. I hope that's somewhat clear. And when you go to HDR, you'll see, here's another example right there. Wait a minute, I think if I actually cancel that and take, there it is. Can you see that? Are you seeing my screen? Probably.
Yes, we see the dock. Or
you see the dock.
There.
You see that that's an extraordinarily good example of an HDR picture. If I had taken that with not HDR and aimed it at the sky, I would have gotten clouds and nothing in the foreground. It would have all been in the shadows, and then I would have had to play with it. So that's how it works. That's what an HDR picture is, and there's one there. See it? That's showing up, right?
Yes.
On the screen. Now look at that. I can see the bush and the grass is in the foreground. The clouds are extraordinary, and you can see the city in the background. HDR. Now, be careful. One of the problems is you're going to go nuts because it's so neat, and everybody starts taking HDR pictures, and you're going to find that all of a sudden these pictures just don't look quite right. they all look like they've been manipulated and they start to look very artificial. So use it judiciously. Other questions?
Can you go over, there were two questions related to HDR. One, somebody was asking just how do you get it on the iPhone, and maybe you could just show people that again. And then there was a question if there's an HDR setting on Androids, and I'm not familiar with HDR being an Android feature if it's just an Apple piece. Do you know?
Hold on for 1 minute here, and someone else come in on the, let me see where it's in different places actually, and sometimes it's there.
And some folks are telling me that it is on some Androids, so it's got to depend.
Yeah, it is. It is on some Androids, and it is on, you know what you may have to do in certain, see, I'm going to show you this with other pieces of editing equipment, but what you might have to do with some of the Apples is go to your settings and go to photographs, and you may have to set it there also with a grid and see. Okay, here it is on this one. I had to go to my settings for my Apple, and then under settings it went to camera, or you can go to photos, and you have to go through settings on this one, not all of them. And when you go there, you can have it take an auto HDR or not. When I show you different kinds of editing apps, you're going to be able to control the HDR all the time from everywhere. If someone's out there right now, raise your hand if you've been using an HDR switch on your iPhone. Okay. It can't always be done that way.
I am seeing folks who, yeah, and I have an HDR switch on my iPhone.
Where is it on yours?
On mine, when I'm looking at it, let's see, when I'm just on the main screen,
yeah.
It actually shows up between the flash symbol and the live picture. So I think I have an older iPhone than you do, and when I hit, it just says HDR, and when I tap it, I have three options. I have auto, on, and off. So that's what I did, but I had to go through settings. They changed the software that comes with it. Actually, when they put in a new version of the software, they might change things. Yeah. Do you know how to find it in some Android operating systems? Because I'm just trying to figure out. That's one of those where it's best to go and Google it or look up a manual for your phone.
Yeah, do that.
I know that it exists, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look for it myself because that's not something I've seen there. So
let's just see something here. Right, well, we're here. HDR setting on iPhone.
What is the difference? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. You got to open. Can you see the screen?
We see not your computer screen. We see your phone screen.
Okay. Let me get off the phone screen right now. Yeah. And here is your answer. Screen sharing. Well, I won't get off it now. What you have to do is you have to go through settings. That's the answer. Okay?
And some folks were saying that they find it in a drop-down where you can find the flash timer and the ratio settings. So that's another place to look. There's drop-downs.
Okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to do it. We got a minute?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. I want to get rid of this. Okay. Here's the way to do it. You go out and you go to settings. You go from settings and you go to camera, and you see where it says auto HDR.
Yep.
Turn it off. Turn it off. Okay? It's off. Go out. Go back into photography. Go to your camera, and there it is. It shows up. See it all? Everyone see it?
Yep.
I'm going to do it again.
So if you have it on auto, you're always shooting HDR.
It's Byzantine. Okay? Yeah. So I can turn the HDR off. And now I can control it from my screen itself. This is good. So I'm going to just show you one more time what to do. What you do is you go back to your settings. You go to camera in your settings. And this may be the same thing on your LG. And where it says Auto HDR, turn it off. By turning it off, what it allows you to do is to come back into your camera and have the HDR control up there on your screen. So if I take a picture like that, and I take a picture in auto, then the two pictures will be slightly different. There it is. But what it does, it won't do much here in this room because you need a little bit more light. Play with it, because that's going to give you the ability from now on to be able to take a picture and have control of HDR. And then if you turn it off, it goes to auto, or you can just have it off like that, and auto is on and off. Okay? And that turns auto HDR off. Auto, there it is. Play with it. You now have control of HDR on your screen when you take the picture.
And there are settings. Somebody let me know that if you go into the settings on your Android, there's a similar setting for HDR where you can enable it to be auto or not. So I'm going to have to see if you can play with it and make it so it's not auto and get the option to toggle, because I like that control within the camera app.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking about the difference between OLED screens and HDR screens. I don't know if you have any familiarity with that and the different options of OLED and HDR.
I do, but I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. That's a research project.
What is organic light emitting, all right? That's OLED. What it means is that there are some television sets now made that are, when you go and turn on your TV set, you have the ability sometimes to get high definition TV. All it means is more lines or more pixels on your TV screen. OLED has a tremendous ability to recreate blacks and higher contrast. I don't know of OLEDs necessarily on TV screens, on computer screens. You might get it. It supposedly gives you better contrast, better color resolution.
So you could use HDR with LED. They're really
makes no difference.
Okay.
Liquid makes no difference.
Okay.
Light emitting diodes.
Right. There was another question. I think it was in the settings. I think it was underneath HDR. There was something about keep normal photo. I think that was a question about something. Let's go back. Yeah, and let's look in here. Yeah, what does that second piece on HDR mean? So does that mean if you do a auto HDR, but you have keep normal photo, you'll get two images?
Yes, and I recommend you do that. What it'll do is it'll keep the original. It'll take two pictures. It'll give you two pictures actually. It'll give you one that's HDR, and when you go to edit it in Lightroom or Photoshop or something, it'll come up as HDR. And it will also keep the non-HDR picture. So if you're really doing some creative photography, some art photography, keep as much of the original as possible. So I'm not going to talk about RAW yet either, or I will if you got time. If you got 3 minutes, I'll tell you about RAW. But these are what we're going to get into when we get into composition and the quality of pictures and why some of these cameras have raw pictures.
Well, I think we are getting pretty close to the end of the night, but if you said it's only going to be 3 minutes, I think it's worth talking about RAW. So why don't we take those 3 minutes? And if people have any other final questions here, but I think, yeah, we're just about at the end of the night, but
okay,
I think it's definitely worth talking about that.
When you take a picture with your iPhone, the computer does all kinds of changes and renditions to give you the best possible picture that you can get. When you go to CVS, I shouldn't even say CVS. When you go anywhere and you print a picture, it's going to try to give you the optimum. Well, it may be that you're going to have to take some of the light off my forehead. It may be that you want to get some light in the background so you can see what's in the back of the room. So it gives you what's known as eventually a JPEG picture. And that's the kind of way that the computer makes the file. And then when you open it from the JPEG, the information comes out. When you take a JPEG picture, it throws a lot of information away. And it gives you a picture that you go to edit that's not going to look very good, either on your computer or on your phone. It's raw. It takes everything. And it's a it has much more information on the size of the file, and you can try this. When you look at a file on your computer, it'll give you the size of the file. And it'll give you the size of the file in number of number of actual small.
Usually it's megabytes. It's bytes of some sort. Some measurement of bytes. Typically.
Let's just use bytes, zeros and ones. Okay, just zeros and ones. A raw picture has an enormous number of zeros and ones, 3 times as much information there than a regular JPEG or a regular picture you take. The issue is that once you get that, you then really have to go and edit that. And you have to have an editor that allows you to be able to do a raw picture. I'll show you that. I'll show you how to do that. You may not have a raw editor, and you may not have a camera that can take raw pictures. If you do have the newer Apples, they are capable of taking a raw picture. It gives you a much wider spread of color and range of gray and definition to deal with than the regular snapshot picture. Leave it like that, what's called. When you take a picture, the file has .jpg at the end of it. It's a JPEG. It's how they compress the data so that it's not this huge file. A raw picture keeps all the data there. Everything is there.
And you can control that in settings, is where you would go and change the default, I would assume?
Yeah, I'll show you. I mean, my camera, mine happens to have it.
It's cool.
But Apple doesn't. So what I have to do is, in order to be able to actually use it, I have to go out and buy a different, or you can't see it now. And I use a thing called Pro Camera, which gives you enormous flexibility. I'll show you that when we get into the apps. It's mind-blowing. This tonight was nothing compared to what some of these applications can do.
We've got some exciting stuff in front of us. Hopefully everybody followed through. I think we've answered all the questions tonight.
I don't know. I mean, I can stay here, but I mean, well, the thing that you've got to do is go home now, take this iPhone, and go through every one of these little icons. Don't worry about it. Play with them. Take a selfie and go and play with it and see what it does to your picture.